Hi, Amy. We're really happy to have you right now to record to talk about your new book, The Plan God Has for You, Hopeful Lessons for Young Women.
Glad to have the opportunity to talk about hope, especially right now. It's so timely for sure.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important right now during all the midst of everything that's happening. First off, I just want to thank you for partnering with us to help write this book, and we're very happy to promote it. The first question I wanted to interview on was what prompted you to write this beautiful book, The Plan God Has for You?
Well, it's been my favorite verse for a long time now. Obviously, it's all about hope. So that's why it speaks to me. You know, just the blessed insights about trusting God's plan for your life and living hopefully. I mean, just listen to the words. For surely I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. Plans for your welfare and not for harm, to give you a future with hope. I especially love the last four lines, of course, because just you need to know what hope means in terms of God's plan and the context of all of that.
Right. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about Jeremiah 2:29-11, which is the verse you were just quoting, I think. Tell me more about how this ties into the theme that you have.
Sure. Obviously, there's so many things that you can draw out based on the verse itself. So obviously the subtitle of the book is Hopeful Lessons for Young Women. So that's what I wanted to offer. I feel like the verse itself can offer just so many insights for various parts of your life, whether it's discernment or learning more about the faith itself and how to apply that to your own life with decisions you're making. Obviously, the saints are good role models of hope themselves. And so I delve into different saints, especially saints that I'm particularly close to, Saint Gianna and Saint Therese. Particularly, I feel like the Blessed Mother's story can give young women a lot of insights as well. She trusted God with her life, and we can do the same. Even Jane Austen is in the book. I'm definitely a fan of hers, and I feel like her stories are just very hopeful in terms of, finding true love and just lessons that go along with that. So really, there's lots of things that people can glean from that are related to hope, even just family life and friendship. So, each chapter delves into different aspects of those sorts of questions and topics.
Yes, it's been a really beautiful book to read, coming across, like you said, those many saints that are such big witnesses and role models for women my age. And I think that you have filled those and placed those in very prominent places throughout the book. What question I wanted to ask you is, I know you mentioned a few saints already, but how do you think a lot of these saints throughout their lives have really given us models for hope in their different aspects and ways of life?
Sure. Saint Therese comes to mind immediately. She lived her little way, which is about doing what God wanted her to do and loving God by loving others and serving others. So that's obviously a terrific lesson. You can have hope by doing that, because that's how you're going to find happiness. And I think the crux of this book is about how hope gives you happiness because you're living your life in a godly way. And the saints are such great models for that. Saint Gianna is another favorite of mine. I love her quote, "Live holy the present moment." That basically sums up what we're all supposed to be doing anyway. And it's just an easy prayer, really, that you can pray when you have a moment or two in your day, and it makes you reassess. And obviously it's hope filled, because if you're living well the present, you're living a hope filled life.
Amy, I see behind you that you have the Memorare listed up on your wall. It's a beautiful prayer that we all love to pray. We're just curious why you've chosen that prayer.
Oh, sure. Mary is just my go-to when I need extra prayer and extra help. And I think the Memorare is rooted in hope because Mary's our mother. She's always looking out for us. And I have numerous stories I could tell about, just really going to this particular prayer. A lot of saints have actually prayed it. Mother Teresa loved this prayer. And I think it's just one of those things, if you commit it to memory, it's always there for you when you need a little extra help with a decision, or there's something bothering you. You can always say, Mary, my mother, please come help me. Despise not my petitions, but in your mercy hear and answer me. She's just always there. And that's another aspect of the book. Mary kind of journeys with readers throughout the book, showing them how she trusted God. Obviously, her life was a lot different than ours, but her care for her children, we are her children, is evident. And just, I've realized I have a Marian heart, more than I thought sometimes, but I'm very close to her, and I just encourage other people to be too.
What would you give to an advice, I know based off the book, to a woman who is, dealing with all the challenges that they're facing right now in today's world? What would be your message of hope in a summary that you would give a young woman my age?
Well, I think it's just staying close to God. St. Therese has this great quote too that I also include in the book. My hope was never mistaken. And I think that's really great. No matter what's going on in your life, if you're trying to figure out what major you should have in college, what your career should be, if you're supposed to get married or be a sister, God is with you, and he's going to help you with the circumstances that he puts before you. Even if there's trials and setbacks, Jesus is with you. And St. Therese just is such an inspiration in that way, because she had her own trials with entry into religious life. Her mother died when she was young. Her father had an illness. She herself went through illness, but yet she stayed close to Jesus and is such an inspiration, obviously, to people in modern times because of that. And just stay close to Jesus, and that's where your hope is found. I mean, there's songs about Jesus is our hope. We say at Easter, Christ, our hope is risen. There's a reason for that, because hope isn't this just vague notion of optimism. It's Jesus is our hope. So no matter what's happening, from pandemics to particular things that people have to deal with, Jesus is with us, and that's what we have to remember.
Right. Amen to that. Going back into taking time to, be with our Lord and sitting in that quiet. And in your chapter on prayer and sacraments, you advise young women to take the time to listen to the Lord and his plan for your life. What would you say are some good habits for young women to get into to help with that?
Sure. I think journaling is really helpful. Just writing down prayers, I find helps me. So I think that would be helpful for others. Something about, maybe because I am a writer, I feel like writing intentions down really does help me. And I think it's just making yourself sit down and be quiet and prayerful, obviously, is the number one thing. So that could be with a journal, it could be listening to music. I also like reading spiritual books, whether it's St. Therese's biography, The Story of a Soul, or other books, just saint quotes that you can reflect on. It always seems when you open a book and pick a saint quote that somehow it applies to your life, at least it does for me. So you can just really reflect on, the saints lived lives like us, maybe in different time periods, or they had different circumstances in their lives, but what they went through applies to us and can be an inspiration. So it's really just making sure you have time um, scheduled in for prayer, whether it's the morning or in the middle of the day. You can take time and pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, at 3 o'clock, wherever you are, or in the evening. Obviously, that's helpful to review your day and see, what you need extra help with, or just different, seeing the blessings throughout your day and praying about those things in addition to whatever intentions you have.
Circling back a little bit to a name that we mentioned earlier, throughout the book, like you said, you draw from saints and popes and major leaders, but you do touch a lot on the beautiful novelist Jane Austen. Tell us a little bit about that and how she ties into this book.
Sure. A whole chapter actually includes insights about Jane Austen and what her different novels can teach us about hope. I think that's the whole summary of what she's writing about. Obviously, it's all these boy meets girl circumstances, and there's different people and different, obviously, scenarios that everyone is dealing with, whether it's Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility or Persuasion. That's another really good one. And so, no matter what the individual stories are, the whole point is that finding true love is what is important, and it's not a superficial thing, and you have to find your right match. And obviously, that's part of a future with hope. So it all relates. So I go through different novels and give insights to the different characters and what you can learn from them, just based on my own reading of the novels. So, if you're a fan of Lizzie and Mr. Darcy, I mentioned them in there. If you're a fan of Mr. Knightley, I think he's the best hero. He's obviously in there. And just, it shows how the heroines and the heroes really get to know each other, and they realize who they're best suited for, which is also part of, I think, understanding Jeremiah 29:11 in your own life, because God has a plan for you, whether it's marriage or religious life. And so, getting to know people and relationships is obviously a really big part of that. And I think Jane Austen would have really liked Jeremiah, because her own prayers talk about, being the best person she can be. I touched on that a little bit. She really wrote some lovely prayers. And so she was a prayerful person. And I think that shows in her novels. There's weddings, there's, chaplains that they deal with, good and bad. And so it's just wholesome stories that everyone can relate to. Mr. Knightley's always the good guy, which is why he's appealing, but then Mr. Darcy is misunderstood, and the heroines understand each other as they go through all these trials and tribulations till they get their happy ending, which is what everyone wants in a novel or real life.
Yeah, absolutely. I fell in love with Jane Austen as an author. And it's wonderful to see how she's transcended time throughout centuries, because I can still say very much that women my age still very much relate to the beautiful stories that she's told and the witness that she offers to us, and to how to conduct ourselves as women, hold ourselves with dignity and confidence, especially in today's era where we're faced with so many opposing factors and so many different media outlets telling us otherwise.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if you say, for instance, if someone wanted to give this book to their daughter or granddaughter, and tell them basically in short notes, like what this book is about and why they should read it, what would you say to them?
If you want to understand how to find happiness in your life in every area and be rooted truly in God's definition of what hope means. Um, that's what this book is about. It will explain to you how to see hope in whatever circumstances or whatever decisions you have to deal with at the particular moment. And it's really um, just rooted in the encouragement of Mary and the saints, and as well as, if you're a fan of Jane Austen, it illustrates how it's all related. So if you want to be a hope-filled person and live a hopeful life, this book is definitely for you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing this time with us and giving us this opportunity to learn more about your new book, The Plans God Has for You, Hopeful Lessons for Young Women. We're so grateful that you could join us.